Previously, we took a look at Smart Comp, which was an AI-based compressor from the guys over at Sonible, and it was an absolute insane plugin. This time around, they've released something that looks even more insane, and it's called Smart Reverb. So let's not waste any time, let's take a look at the plugin and familiarise ourselves with the different controls and what they do, and then we'll go on to do some audio examples and listen to this thing in action. Let's first familiarise ourselves with the different controls. Just like all the other smart plugins that are in the Sonible range, you have your Learn function, which is this little green button here. We have our profile section, so from the drop-down list we can choose a different profile to give the plugin a little nudge to help tailor the sound a little bit differently. If there's nothing in the drop-down list, you can always use universal. And then to the right of this we have our default button, so if you've changed any of the settings you click on this and the original initial preset that the plugin generated it will revert back to. So down here we have the reverb matrix, and this is like an XY pad, and what you can do is grab the node here and you can drag it around, and as you do so you'll notice that on the right hand side of the plugin you can see some of the different bars and lines changing. And this is to give us a blend between different reverb styles. So if I was to put it straight up, it's going to go for a more natural sound. If I put it straight down, it'll be more artificial, left intimate, and right rich. The different descriptions for these and what they are. Intimate means an intimate reverb that gives your sound a warm and personal touch. So very up close, warm, very personal. The rich sound is pretty much what it says. It makes it sound lush and full and multi-layered. The natural reverb sounds like the reverb signal was recorded in a real environment. So it's like it's in a room or a natural environment. And then artificial reverb does not try to simulate an actual room, but rather plays with different reverb characteristics. Now, just below this pad, we have the three controls for width, color, and clarity. So width is pretty self-explanatory. This will determine how much of the reverb is going to be in stereo, or if you want to make it more mono. Color does something different. You can make it sound brighter, or you can make it sound darker. And adjusting the clarity allows you to make the reverb sound more transparent. Just below this, we have our reverb time setting. Now, this is the only part of the plugin that the AI function does not set for you. So you'll have a default reverb time, and you can play around with this manually, and you also have your pre-delay time as well that you can play around with. On the right-hand side, we finally get to the particle display, and a lot of you might think this is just some kind of flashy gimmick designed so you can buy the plugin because it looks cool, when actually, no, it's not. It's something very complex which has been visually represented in a very clear and simple way. So whoever come up with this, hats off to you, because it makes a lot of sense once you get your head around it. Essentially, the particle display is an interactive visual representation of the reverb's anatomy, and any changes that are made to the reverb settings are all reflected in real time inside of this display. In layman's terms, this will allow us to control the decay of reverb tails across time in different frequency bands. So how you read this can be broken down in 4 different ways. If you read it from left to right, this represents time. So 0.00 all the way up to 1.50 represents the time. On the vertical axis, it represents frequency. So we have 3 distinct bands of frequencies: 20 Hz to 200 Hz, 200 Hz to 2K, and 2K to 20K. All these little particle bubbles are basically the reverb particles, and you can see where it is most dense across the spectrum. All these little vertical lines that look like a grid are known as the spectral shaper grid, and what this allows us to do is to adjust the decay of those particles within those frequency bands. So if I wanted to shorten the decay of the reverb particles in the low frequency band here, I can do so, and then it can gradually lengthen over time. So you can get some very interesting results with this. And from a sound design point of view, it opens up a lot of doors, especially when you get down below into the temporal shaper where things can start to get very crazy. The temporal shaper allows you to modify the decay, spread, and density of the reverb over time, and any changes that we make here will be reflected in the particle display above, and you'll notice that the grid will change as well. At the bottom we have 3 different tabs: decay, spread and density. Each of these provides sloping line controls so we can control the effects over time. Decay allows us to make the reverb sound more natural if we'd make the slopes very gradually decrease over time, but you can also get very creative with these slopes and induce some delay-like effects, or have it so it does some crazy swells. You can get very creative with the decay settings in this plugin. Spread ensures a nice evolvement over time, so if you're using longer reverb settings, you're going to hear this effect more. But you need to make sure that your width is not set to 0 on the global width, otherwise you're not going to hear the effect. So at least have this value at 50% if you want to really start hearing what it's doing. Density can allow you to make the reverb sound more sparse, and if you have it quickly increase over time, it will sound more natural. But you can also make the reverb sound like it's wavy or ripply if you use lower density settings. So really, we have quite a lot of control over the actual shape and sound of the reverb, not only across time, but also across the bands of frequencies, which is what's really interesting with this plugin. At the bottom left here, we have our dry and wet settings, so we can blend the reverberated signal back in with the original. We also have a freeze and infinite function, and on the right hand side we have a basic 2-band EQ filter which comes with some different curves, so we can EQ the overall sound. At the top of the plugin we have our basic reset, bypass, an A-B section so you can copy 2 different settings and change between them to see which ones you prefer. We also have a little preset section where we can save our own little settings, and then we have our undo and redo functions as well. Now that we've gone over the whole interface and the different controls, let's take a listen to some audio examples of this working. So what are my final thoughts on Sonible's intelligent AI reverb, SmartVerb? Is this the one reverb to rule them all, or will you still be reaching for various other reverbs when you're working on your tracks? First of all, let's get the AI out the way. The AI in this plugin does an outstanding job of learning the input source and then providing a workable suggestion to you quickly right off the bat. And having the ability to just dial in the sound and how dry or how wet it is and the width is really intuitive, really quick to work with, and it's going to make a lot of people happy. Now, where this plugin really shines though, in my opinion, is in sound design. If you're a sound designer and you want to work with your reverbs, I mean, for example, you might be using things like Black Hole or Valhalla's set of reverbs. This thing does things that those cannot do, and it does them really well. Having the ability to control the decay times across the different frequency bands, the spectral tempo shapers are an absolute game changer, and you can get some really interesting and crazy sounding results out of this reverb in a matter of minutes just by playing around with the different controls. What I love the most about SmartVerb is how easy it is to make your reverb sit in a mix and not sound too muddy or take up too much space. When using the clarity function, you can reduce the masking effect that's going on the reverb tails across the frequency spectrum, which is really, really ingenious. And then having that 2-band EQ just to tweak things just that little bit more really does make this very, very usable indeed. In closing, I feel that Sonible have done it again. They've created a very unique yet powerful product that offers things that other reverbs are not quite doing at the moment. In terms of usability, it's very straightforward to use, especially if you're a beginner. You don't have to worry about diving too deep. You can click the learn function, adjust the tail time and the pre-delay, then use the XY pad to find something that suits your taste, and then you can use the wet dry function to blend the reverb back in with the unprocessed signal. However, where this really shines is with the spectral and temporal shapers. Being able to manipulate the decays across the different frequency ranges and also play around with the spread and the stereo field and the colour and the sound of it is just fantastic. It's a sound designer's absolute dream reverb. Go and download the demo of this product and try it out for yourselves before making a decision on buying it. But take my word for it, this is a very, very usable and fantastic sounding product. I'll leave some links in the description below. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't, you know what to do. And as always, leave your comments in the box below with your thoughts on SmartVerb.